Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody doing today?
Good.
Let's open with a word of prayer and then we'll get started. Our Heavenly Father, we come to you now and just ask you bless our time as we gather to worship you and to sing praises to you, Lord. We just ask you bless us in this time. Just ask you open our hearts, open our minds and our eyes and our ears, Lord, that you would hear and understand what you have for us today, Lord. Be with Brother Mike as he brings our message, that we would be open to the words that you have for us through him. We just ask all these things in your name. Amen. Our announcements. We have Parkland services today at 4 o'clock. And we have men's fellowship at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, midweek prayer group on Wednesday. We're going to do one more week of devotion and prayer, and then we'll have we should get our books tomorrow in the mail, so we'll hand the books out, have a week to kind of look at them and explore them, and then we'll start the study on the 8th of July, so in 2 weeks. We have 4th of July coming up next weekend, and the annual Secret Sister Party is coming up also on the 6th, right?
Yes, and I want to say something about that. If you notice, there's a little blurb about it on the back of the bulletin. And our theme is a drive-by luau. And you're invited to come and go or come and stay. We don't care which one, but just come and have a good time. But we do want everyone to bring their Secret Sister gift to the church by next Sunday so that we can have them all when we have our party. And the other thing is, this is not just for Secret Sisters. If you're a woman in this church, come join us and have a good time. You don't have to come to Baptist Women. You don't have to be a Secret Sister. Just come and fellowship with us and have a good time. We're going to do it all outside. We'll social distance. So, if you want to, or you can all sit together and hug. I don't care. Just come and have a good time. But be sure to bring your Secret Sister gifts, and we will be drawing for, or you'll be getting your new Secret Sister.
All right, any other announcements this morning? All right, it's good to see everybody.
And as we begin our time of worship, I invite you to stand and turn to page 315, and as we lift our hearts and our voices to the Lord, and His name is wonderful.
Would you turn to number 308, please? Sing the glory of his name. Make his praise glorious.
May his glorious name be praised forever. The whole earth
God of our father Israel, from eternity to eternity.
Yours, Lord, is the greatness and power and the glory and the splendor and the majesty, for everything in the heavens and on earth belongs to you.
I assure you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and he will do even greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, so the Father may be glorified in the Son.
In your hand are power and might. It is in your hand to make great and give strength to all.
Now therefore, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name.
May you be strengthened with all power, according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience, with joy giving thanks to the Father, who has enabled you to share in the saints' inheritance in the light. Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, again, we just thank you for this place to come that we call our church, just to be with you, and get on our knees and open our hearts and our minds, Lord, that you might have us walk away here with a better sense of knowing that you are still in control. And Lord, though we don't really understand everything we read about you all the time, we know that it's for the better of us, Lord. And Lord, again, we just thank you for all that you do for us. These things we say in your name. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated and turn to page 314 as we continue to praise Jesus with our voices and all hail the power of Jesus' name.
Oh, hail the power of Jesus.
ability to give these offerings and tithes, and we just ask that you be with them, bless them, be with us as we do your work, Lord. Ask that you be with Brother Mike that brings your message, and be with each of us to take that message to heart. That's the sins in your name. Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to be back amongst you. Does anybody know why they call it a pew? Me either. I gotta find out. I just thought of that while we were standing there. Just a three-letter word. Where does that come from? I'm gonna go home and look it up now. If you will turn in your Bibles, and this is going to be one of those sword drill challenges for you, to the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk. Don't be afraid to use your table of contents because it's one of the minor prophets. Hard to find. It's about 5 books before the New Testament starts, if that'll help. Think about Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. That ends the Old Testament. So back up about 5 books. Really short book. Only 3 chapters. That's why he's a minor prophet. We don't know much about Habakkuk. In fact, we know almost nothing about Habakkuk. From all the other prophets, we can read through what they have wrote, and we can kind of get some clues as to when and where and who they are. But Habakkuk's book is so short, we don't know much about him at all. We have to guess as to even when he wrote this, and not everyone agrees, but from the clues that we get in his reading, we figure it's about 600 BC. Now, 600 BC, things that were going on in the world at that time, by then the children of Israel had split into 2 kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Northern kingdom known as Israel, southern kingdom known as Judah. Habakkuk was in the southern kingdom, he was in Judah. At the time that he wrote this, the northern kingdom had already been destroyed by the Assyrians. Back about 80 years before this, about 720 BC, Assyria had attacked Israel, had laid siege on Jerusalem, like a 3-year siege, and they had finally got in and just wiped out Israel. They had scattered them, killed them, hauled them away as captives. In fact, Israel never recovered. There was a remnant of the Israelites left in that northern kingdom, but the Assyrians had moved in and they intermingled, interbred, intermarried, and those 10 tribes that made up the northern kingdom were so dispersed that we've lost them basically to history. They've just gone away. In fact, when we move into the New Testament, you know, we talk about the Samaritans a lot. That's what happened to the northern kingdom. Those 10 tribes of Israel had intermingled so much that they were looked upon as, and given a new name, we call them Samaritans. And the southern kingdom looked down upon them because they were not purebreds any longer. They no longer went to the temple to worship. They were so dispersed. So Assyria comes in, wipes out the northern kingdom, attacks the southern kingdom, but God stopped that and turned Assyria back, so Assyria had gone away. Judah had a good king at that time. He's not the reason that Assyria lost. God's the reason Assyria lost. But thanks to the good king for the good king Josiah, he was in charge of that. He had knocked down all the idols and worshiped God. Problem is, good kings go away, bad kings come in. Josiah's son, Jehoaz, became king after Josiah died. Jehoahaz was so bad, his reign lasted 3 months, and God took him out. And then his brother Jehoiakim becomes king. It seems like a lot has happened since I was here last. It seems like it's been about 3 years, but it was only March sometime. It was before the shutdown had taken place, and we were not sure what all was going to happen. Well, we found out, right? And we're still not real sure what all is going to happen. It's crazy, exactly. We were talking, several people had asked me, what's school going to look like in the fall? We don't know. We got about a month to figure it out. We still don't know, right? And even when we do start, we don't know. How long is it going to last? How long are we going to shut her down again? We don't know. If you'll remember back to when this all started, they wanted to shut it down for 15 days to flatten the curve. Do you remember that? It's been more than 15 days, and here we are, still not knowing. The experts don't know what's the best thing. No one can agree on anything. So, a couple of weeks ago, we finally got back together as a church to hold worship. Besides being on the computer, we did Facebook Live as well. My parents' church did Zoom, so they could actually interact some. That's a little better than Facebook Live. But we finally got back together, and our first Sunday of worshiping together and studying, one of the songs we sang was called "The Heart of Worship." It was by Matt Redman. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but because of that song, and because of a devotion that I had a couple of days ago, this sermon came out to me. So we're going to look at Habakkuk. And we're going to look at all 3 chapters. I'm not going to read all 3 because that would be a lot. Of course, that would give me 30 minutes. That would fill up my sermon if I just read it. I'm going to kind of skip through there and and just talk about that. So we've set up what's going on in the nation, in the kingdom of Judah. Israel is no more. Judah is standing alone. They had a good king, and as the history of Judah and Israel both, good kings, bad king, good king, bad king, we're in a bad king. So I'm going to start off in chapter 1, verse 1. The burden which the prophet Habakkuk saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry, and you will not hear? Even cry out to you violence, and you will not save. Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and contention arises. Therefore the law is powerless, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore perverse judgment proceeds. And my Bible is a New King James Version. I grew up in a church that was half the congregation was King James only, and the other half was, well, let's learn a little bit more. And so I kind of straddled the line to use the New King James. But whenever I study something, I always like to get online. I use Bible Gateway, and I look at other translations to see how it's different. When I read this passage, I looked up the New Living Translation and read it. And something really struck me when I read it through the New Living Translation. I'm going to read that to you, those same verses, through the New Living Translation. That the prophet Habakkuk received in a vision. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Violence is everywhere, I cry, but you do not come to save. Must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I am surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. The law has become paralyzed, and there is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted. as I read it out of the New Living Translation, it struck me that Habakkuk must have been watching CNN. He's looking around and he sees destruction and violence everywhere. People are tearing down monuments and statues of our history. They're trying to rewrite our history, trying to make it go away because they don't like it. We're surrounded by people who love to argue and fight, and I scroll through my Facebook feed and, oh my goodness, where is all this anger and hatred coming from? Where is all this being offended over little things, being offended by things that happened 150 years ago? The law has become paralyzed. We won't even allow the police into an area of the city of Seattle. People are crying out to defund the police. There is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted. I read what Habakkuk was looking at, and I look around our nation and I see the same thing going on. Oh my goodness. Now, I grew up in a church where I would feel guilty if I questioned God, but we see Habakkuk questioning God. How long are you going to let this go on? And I kind of see myself asking that same question. When's the trumpet going to sound? How long is this going to go on? How bad can this get? God replies to Habakkuk. The Lord replied, "Look around at the nations. Look and be amazed. For I am doing something in your own day, something you wouldn't believe, even if someone told you about it. I am raising up the Babylonians, a cruel and violent people. They will march across the world and conquer other lands." Habakkuk, be careful what you ask for. Bad stuff might be coming. So Habakkuk's complaining to God that how long are you going to let this go on? How bad are things going to get before you step in and do something? And God responds with, let me get those words right. Look around and be amazed. I'm going to do something that you wouldn't believe if I told you. God says, I'm getting out of the way of the camera. Stay in front of the camera. God says, I'm going to do something that you wouldn't believe. I'm going to use an evil nation to combat the evil in your nation. I'm going to use evil for my purposes of fixing this. Now you can fast forward in the book of Habakkuk and see Habakkuk's response later on in chapter 1 said, what? What are you talking about? You're going to use evil to combat evil? In verse 12, Habakkuk says, "Oh Lord, my God, my Holy One, you are eternal. Surely you do not plan to wipe us out. Oh Lord, our rock, you have sent these Babylonians to correct us, to punish us for our many sins. But are you pure and cannot stand the sight of evil? Will you wink at their treachery? Should you be silent while the wicked swallow up people more righteous than they?" So Habakkuk is pretty confused by God's response, that he's going to use evil to get rid of evil. God's going to use this nation of Babylon, who are some bad dudes, to fix Judah. Habakkuk's response is about like mine would be. Are you sure you want to do that? But this is going to be a bad thing. So a lot of questioning going on. God's telling him, trust me. They will get theirs too. I'm going to use this evil nation to fix Judah. And then I'll eventually fix the Babylonians. But there's a lesson to be learned. in chapter 2, God, let me finish what Habakkuk was saying, is Habakkuk finishes questioning God about, are you sure you want to use evil to combat evil? Starting in chapter 2, verse 1, Habakkuk says, I will climb up on my watchtower and stand at my guard post. There I will wait and see what the Lord says and how he will answer my complaint, how he's going to answer my question. This whole book of Habakkuk, only 3 chapters, could have happened in a day as far as we know. This might have been pretty short, and it might have been a couple of weeks for Habakkuk waiting for God to respond. We don't know that. But it's pretty short. So Habakkuk is going to get on his watchtower. He's going to wait for God to reply. And God replies. How long it took, we don't know. But God replies, write my answer plainly on tablets, so that a runner can carry the correct message to others. This vision is for a future time. It describes. If it seems slow in coming, wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. Look at the proud. They trust in themselves, and their lives are crooked. But the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God. Habakkuk cries out to God, how long must we endure this evil that's around us? How patient are you going to be? God responds with, look around and be amazed. I'm going to use an evil nation to fix this. Habakkuk responds with, are you sure you want to do that? Because they're more evil than we are. You're going to use evil to fix evil? God says, yeah, write this down. Make sure you write this down. It's going to take probably longer than what you expect, but I'm going to fix it. And those who are righteous, the righteous will live by faithfulness to me. You can trust one thing, and that is the faithfulness of God. We can be worried about a lot of stuff. Habakkuk was worried about all the things that were going on in his world at the time. We're kind of worried about a lot of the stuff that's going on in our world at the time, right now. We missed the murder hornets. They apparently went away. I don't know what happened to them. But we got a lot of junk going on in our nation. And we don't always know the answer. We don't know what God's got in store. Could it be that God's going to use a worse evil to fix the evil that's going on? Hold on to your hat if he is. I don't know the answer, but hold on to your hat if it is. God continues on in chapter 2. We get down to verse 14 as God's explaining all these things that he's going to do, what it's going to look like. And he tells Habakkuk, for as the waters fill the sea, the earth will be filled with an awareness of the glory of the Lord. Says Habakkuk, what I'm going to do, you won't believe. If I spelled it all out to you, you wouldn't believe it. But know that those evil people will get what they deserve eventually. And know that there's going to be such an awareness of my glory that it's going to be just like the waters of the sea. It's going to be full of my glory. We don't know how this is all going to turn out. We don't know how God's going to respond to it. But I do know that his glory is going to be like the waters of the sea when it's all said and done. He's going to work it out to where we would be amazed. Probably if he told us what's going to happen right now, we wouldn't believe it. We wouldn't understand it, just like Habakkuk. we get to chapter 3, and Habakkuk begins a prayer. And he starts going over all the things that God has done for his people in the past. All the things that have God has just blessed that nation. God likes to take things that seem impossible to us, and sometimes he likes to wait until it gets to that point before he acts. Remember back whenever he made a covenant with Abraham, he told Abraham, you're going to be the father of a nation so large it's in number like the grains of sand. You can't even number it, right? So he told Abraham that. Abraham was like 80 years old when he told him, and he waited until he was like 99 and waited until Sarah was beyond the age of having kids before it all started. God promised him something, but then waited until it was completely implausible, seemingly impossible, before he responded. And then, even after Abraham gets that one son, he has him take him to a mountain and offer him as a sacrifice. So he promises Abraham, I'm going to give you this land, and I'm going to number your descendants like the sands of grain. There are going to be so many of them. And it took quite a few years before he even got to one, and then he tells him, I want you to sacrifice that one on this mountain. Do you know Abraham lived in tents his whole life? Never had a home. This promise that God gave him, and Abraham spends his life wandering around in a tent, and then taking his son to this mountain. God waits until he has him tied up, laying on the altar, laying on the wood with the knife in his hand. Gotta use my left one because I can't get my right one that way. The knife in his hand above his head before God stops him. Stop. Abraham, I don't want your son. I'm going to give you mine. Here's my lamb caught in the thicket. The lamb that represents Jesus with his crown of thorns caught in the thicket. Do you know that was the same mountain? Abraham named that mountain, the Lord will provide. That's the same mountain that Christ was crucified on. There's no way, if he had told Abraham all of that, Abraham could have comprehended it. There was no way, if God would have explained everything that Habakkuk could have understood, could have comprehended that. And I think there is no way, if God was to explain to us how this is all going to work out, that we could understand it, that we could comprehend it. I think our only response is to do what Habakkuk did. Habakkuk's questions that he asked in chapter 1, chapter 2, we get to chapter 3, and Habakkuk's questions, his worry turns into worship. Chapter 3, Habakkuk says, this prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk. I have heard all about you, Lord. I am filled with awe by your amazing works. In this time of our deep need, help us again as you did in years gone by. And in your anger, remember your mercy. I see God moving across the deserts from Edom, the Holy One coming from Mount Paran. His brilliant splendor fills the heavens, and the earth is filled with his praise. His coming is as brilliant as the sunrise. Rays of light flash from his hands where his awesome power is hidden. Pestilence marches before him. Plague follows close behind him. When he stops, the earth shakes. When he looks, the nations tremble. He shatters the everlasting mountains and levels the eternal hills. He is the eternal. I see the people of Cushan in distress, and the nation of Midian trembling in terror. Was it in anger, Lord, that you struck the rivers and parted the sea? Were you displeased with them? No. You were sending your chariots of salvation. You brandished your bow and your quiver of arrows. You split open the earth with flowing rivers. The mountains watched and trembled. Onward swept the raging waters. The mighty deep cried out, lifting its hands in submission. The sun and moon stood still in the sky as your brilliant arrows flew and your glittering spear flashed. You marched across the land in anger and trampled the nations in your fury. You went out to rescue your chosen people, to save your anointed ones. You crushed the heads of the wicked, bones from head to toe. With his own weapons, you destroy the chief of those who rushed out like a whirlwind. Thinking Israel would be easy prey, you trampled your horses, and the mighty waters piled high. I trembled inside when I heard this. My lips quivered with fear. My legs gave way beneath me, and I shook in terror. I will wait quietly for the coming day, when disaster will strike the people who invade us. And even though we have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cow barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. Habakkuk's worry became worship. When he decided to wait quietly for the coming day, when he decided to wait upon the Lord, his worry turned into worship. The truest expression of our trust in God will always be worship. The truest expression of our trust in God will always be worship of Him. It struck me when our church had our first meeting and we sang the song, The Heart of Worship by Matt Redman. Matt Redman was the song leader of the church. He's from England, Anglican Church. He was the song leader, and the pastor or minister, whatever they call him, came to the church one Sunday and said, we're going to change some things. We're going to do it different. Their song worship service had gotten to where they're doing lights and the fog machine and the smokes and putting on a show. And the minister said, we're going to strip it down. We're not even going to play musical instruments. We're going to sing it a cappella. We're going to get back to the basics. And the song Heart of Worship by Matt Redman says, when it's all stripped away, when the music fades and everything is stripped away and we get back to the heart of worship, is it still about Jesus? So God took our church at large, this spring, and He said, I'm going to send a global pandemic. And all the governments of all the nations are going to forbid you to get together. They're going to make you stay at home. We're going to strip away this building. We're going to strip away our pews. We're going to strip away the singing together and all these things that we've been doing for so long. I'm going to strip it away. I'm going to find out, is the heart of worship still Jesus? God hit me between the eyes with that. Was all of that time that we were isolated, stuck at home, was it still about Jesus? Even though the fig trees have no blossom, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, how about we add in there, even if the wheat crop fails or the corn crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the feedlots are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. I don't know how this is all going to turn out. And I think even if God told us, I wouldn't believe it or wouldn't be able to comprehend it, most likely. Because He's done it before. And I think He's going to do it again. So let our trust in God be expressed by our worship. Thank you for joining me.
Please stand and turn to page 433 for our invocation hymn, I Surrender All. Use this time as a time to let